What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and I have headphones on for no reason, and Wilde Beyond the Witchlight is here. It's finally here. So this time, let's talk about the races in Wilde Beyond the Witchlight. We knew we were going to get two, the Faerie and the Harengon, previously known as the Rabbit Folk. A rabbit, anthropomorphic rabbit-style creature in the vein of some of the other animals that we have. And they, at least the Faerie, received significant changes from the folk of the Feywild Unearthed Arcana. So we're going to talk about them, and I'll give you my opinions and what was changed and things like that. Now, if you watched my live stream earlier when I received my copy of the book a couple weeks ago, you'll know that we already discussed this. But for those of you who don't know, I want to showcase it here, and here it is on D&D Beyond. So a little bit up front to talk about, right, creating your character. This is kind of the standard format we'll now see going forward with all new races introduced in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. We have kind of standard language up front and then specific language added below. And if we do end up getting a 5.5e or a 6e in the future, I imagine this will be a blanket thing we have going forward. So ability score increases. You can either get a +2 in one ability score, a +1 in another, or a +1 in 3 scores of your choice. That's applied to both of the races here. Languages is common in another language of your choice. The creature type is determined by the race. Most of the time it's humanoid. In some cases, like for example the Faerie, which we're going to get to, it can be Fey. They added in a lifespan feature, which is something we have not seen before. If you recall, during my Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft video, I had a lot of complaints about that because it doesn't tell us if you've now acquired something that essentially makes you almost an undead, vampire, something like that. It doesn't change the way your lifespan is, but you are fundamentally not that base creature. You are something new. And I was wondering, like, if I was a human and I became a Dhampir, am I still under a human's lifespan, or does it change? And a lot of you speculated at the time, like, maybe it's just implied, but they actually went and changed it. So I don't know if I had any influence on that, but I do appreciate it. But it also leaves something a little to be desired here. It says, typical, it's different across. It says most characters in the multiverse have about a century. Some races like dwarves and elves live more than centuries or multiple centuries. Fairies and Harengons, however, have a lifespan about a century. I'm fine with the Harengon having a lifespan of about a century, but in my brain, fairies should live longer, more akin to like an elf per se. And then this is also new, height and weight. So in previous books where we got additional races like Volo's Guide or Mordenkainen's, they gave us other tables to roll on to provide our own height and weight. And then they've kind of removed that, which I also appreciate, adding customizability. And for you and me, that might not be a problem, but we do have people out there, and there's no fault of their own. That's just how they operate. They only function in what the books provide to them because that's what they feel comfortable doing. So, for example, if the book said that a fairy had this span of height and weight, and this span, that's how it was working, they would say, well, that's what it is. And you could say, well, can I change that? And they might not feel comfortable doing it because they're a newer DM or that they just like to run it by the book. So they've added a degree of customizability even further by saying player characters, regardless of race, typically fall into the same ranges of height and weight. If you'd like to determine your character's height and weight randomly, consult the random height and weight table in the player's handbook, and then choose the best one that represents the build you imagine for your character. So if you imagine that your fairy is thin and lithe and tall, use an elf stat. If you imagine that they're squat and stocky, use a dwarf. I feel like that makes sense to me. So let's talk about the fairy. So it says we do have all these fantastical fairies in folklore and things, and they have fey characteristics. So originally in the Folk of the Feywild, we also had fey characteristics of a D8. Your wings are like those of a bird, multicolored skin, exceptionally large ears, glittering mist surrounds you, spectral horn on your forehead like a little unicorn horn. Your legs are insectile, you smell like fresh brownies, or a noticeable harmless chill surrounds you. These are just fun quirks. I love these things. They really add to races and classes. I love them. I'd love to see more of these across the board because it helps build fun roleplay and descriptive mechanics to your character. So here are the fairy traits. You are fey. So that means that you are not considered a humanoid, so spells that specifically affect humanoids do not affect you. For example, charm person or dominate person, say they work on a targeted humanoid, they do not work on you. I don't know about other charm-based spells. I always find it interesting to me that things like suggestion or other things that are affected by charms, if you were something with Fey ancestry like an elf, you'd have advantage on that saving throw. Like say a dominate monster is a charm effect, so you would have advantage on the saving throw as an elf because of your Fey ancestry. But if you are a Fey creature like the Faerie, getting a dominate person cast on you, you are subject to it as normal. So in a way, the elf has more benefits because it's advantage all the time versus immunity to just one spell. So it's interesting how that works. You are small size. Your walking speed is 30 feet. You have Druidcraft as a cantrip. Starting at 3rd level, you can cast the Faerie Fire spell. And at 5th level, you can cast Enlarge Reduce on your Enlarge Reduce. Sorry. Once you cast either one, you can't cast that again until you finish a long rest. And the nice new thing we see in all of these races, you can also cast either of these spells using any spell slots you have of the appropriate level. Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma is what you use. You pick when you choose the race. And then flight, because of your wings, you have a flying speed equal to your walking speed. You can't use this flying speed if you're wearing heavy or medium armor. So I'm sure if you're familiar with Folk of the Feywild, there are 2 huge changes there. One, we originally had Fairy Flight, which was just flying speed equal to your walking speed and can hover. It's magical, it does not require wings, and there was no restriction on armor, which I thought was really cool because you could technically be a heavy armor wearing Paladin Fairy and no issues. They unfortunately nerfed the flight to just be in light or no armor. Also, Fairy Magic originally was just Druidcraft and Faerie Fire, because we also had this ability which was called Fey Passage. You can squeeze through a space as narrow as 1 inch wide. Instead, they have removed that and given you Enlarge Reduce. Now, technically, you are a small-sized creature. If you cast Reduce on yourself, you become tiny size. That does not guarantee that you can squeeze through a space of up to 1 inch. But it is more versatile in that you can cast Enlarge Reduce on yourself. You can make yourself larger. You can make yourself smaller. But it also can be cast on other people. It's not limited to only a self-cast. So I agree with the concept of more versatility, but in my mind, I still liked Fey Passage better. I thought it was a more fun thing and allowed for like how fairies could sneak through keyholes and things like that. Obviously, your small size, you won't be able to do that now. Kind of a bummer. You obviously could just homebrew it back, but let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. How do you feel on this change? Would you prefer Fey Passage, the ability to squeeze through 1 inch spaces, or the versatility of having just Enlarge Reduce and usable as normal? Now remember, that's a free Enlarge Reduce once a day once you hit level 5, and if you happen to be a class that has spellcasting abilities, you can use this using your spell slots, which is also nice because depending on the class you pick, you might not normally have access to Enlarge Reduce, or Faerie Fire for that matter, and now you would. Alright, moving on to the Harengon. We can see here you are a humanoid race. You are medium or small. You choose when you select this race. Your walking speed is 30 feet. You can add your proficiency bonus to initiative rolls. You have proficiency in perception. You have lucky footwork. When you fail a dex saving throw, you can use a reaction to roll a d4, add it to the save, potentially turning it into a success, and you can't use this reaction if you're prone or your speed is 0. And then a Rabbit Hop. As a bonus action, you can jump a number of feet equal to 5 times your proficiency bonus without provoking attacks of opportunity, or opportunity attacks rather. You can use this trait if your speed, only use it if your speed is greater than 0, and you can use it a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus and get all uses back when you finish a long rest. So that has some changes as well. We still have the same creature type, size, speed. Hair Trigger, I don't know if it has the same name. It does, as well as Leporine Senses, so you still have all of that. Lucky Footwork is the same ability, however, here they've added now you can't use this reaction if you're prone or your speed is 0. I guess that kind of makes sense. If you're supposed to be using your literal lucky rabbit's feet to move, you have to be able to do so. Whereas previously it didn't matter, you could be prone and still get that ability. And Rabbit Hop originally was just a nightmare to understand, in my opinion. You would, once during each of your turns, if you walked 5 feet, you could roll a d12, add that many feet to the direction. It doesn't cost movement, but only works if your speed's more than 0. Just get rid of that. That was garbage. I appreciate the new version. It is basically a disengage. It's 5 times your proficiency bonus, so you start immediately with 10 movement for that. up to upwards of 60. I'm sorry, up to over 30 when you get to higher levels, 30 feet of movement as a bonus action without provoking attacks of opportunity. The only benefit is you have to have movement speed, so you can't be grappled to do this. And if you've done your full movement, you don't have any speed left, so you can't move your full movement and then do this. This would have to come first. It is proficiency bonus times per long rest, but I think that this is a very strong contender for a super solid race for a lot of reasons. One, proficiency bonus to initiative rolls is huge. That starts at 2 and goes up. If you're wearing heavy armor, there's no reason you couldn't be a heavy armor wearing Harengon. You're going to get a benefit because more often than not, heavy armor wielders typically dump dex because they're going to use strength and their armor to make up for it. That's a little bit of benefit to your initiative roll. People will fight me on this, and I will ask for your opinion, but the way I read it, the Harengon's ability lets it benefit from a rogue's reliable talent. Let's go take a look at the rogue, and I'll show you what I mean. So, for example, if we were to go look at the rogue ability reliable talent, it says, whenever you make an ability check that lets you add your proficiency bonus, you can treat a roll of a 9 or lower as a 10. This says you can add your proficiency bonus to your initiative rolls. So as such, I am adding my proficiency bonus. Oops, sorry, I did that. I am adding my proficiency bonus. Therefore, in my mind, I can treat a roll of a 9 or lower on an initiative roll as a 10. Now, that is a specific situation of a Harengon being a level 11 rogue to get that benefit, but as far as I'm concerned, mechanically, that makes sense due to the wording. And even if we get official ruling from Jeremy Crawford, which I might reach out and on Twitter and see if we get an answer on it, someone may have already done it, in my mind, it should still work that way. The other benefit here you have, save for like lucky footwork, this could be very interesting too if you did happen to be playing a rogue. You're going to start off with perception skill proficiency, which is nice. You get this initiative roll bonus, which is also can be very nice for a rogue. And then lucky footwork you might not be thinking is super great, but remember a rogue gets evasion at level 7, meaning if they fail a roll, they only take half damage, but if they succeed, they take none on a dexterity saving throw. And it would be very interesting to watch that D4 potentially turn that half damage you take with a failure into 0 damage with a success. Now, also lucky footwork is just generally useful across the board. It also stacks with things like Bless, which would give you an extra D4 to your saving throw. So if someone puts Bless on you, and if you happen to be lucky enough to have a Peace Domain Cleric in your party who puts Emboldening Bond and Bless on you, you could potentially be stacking 3d4 to a Dexterity saving throw, which would be wild to me, but that would be really cool. Also, Rabbit Hop makes this a wonderful race for anything because it gives you a bonus action disengage. Now again, probably not the best for the rogue. That ability kind of is lost on the rogue because rogues can disengage as a bonus action starting at level 2 with cunning action. However, any other any other class rather that doesn't have access to a freebie disengage, monks can technically do it as well with the use of a key point at 2nd level, but I know I've played a paladin and other kind of heavier melee bruiser characters, or even things like a wizard or a bard, and a freebie bonus action disengage would be huge. And that is exactly what this is without being quantified as a disengage action. Now again, the movement scales with your proficiency bonus, whereas a disengage is your full movement. So if you're like a monk and you have crazy movement, you'd be better off disengaging. But Rabbit Hop is free proficiency bonus times per long rest. This could be huge on a barbarian, a paladin, a fighter, a wizard. A lot of benefits there. And again, we see this Harengon here wielding a halberd, but obviously you don't have to be linked to a martial. A Harengon wizard would be great. Technically, a Harengon wizard, if you were a war magic Harengon wizard, you could add your proficiency bonus, your intelligence modifier, and your dexterity modifier all to your initiative roll. Same thing with like a Harengon swashbuckler rogue. You'd be adding dex, proficiency bonus, and charisma all to your initiative modifier. Throw on something like alert as well, adding a +5 to your initiative roll, and you will never be bottom of the initiative order ever, depending on how you work some of this stuff out. So I actually am getting an image in my head of a Harengon wizard in like robes with like the wizard hat with like holes cut out for the ears to come out. And having this benefit to dexterity saving throws if necessary, this freebie disengage to get your wizard out of a bad spot, potentially saving a spell slot so you don't have to burn a Misty Step to get out of there, could be really, really cool. So anyway, there you go, folks. That is the 2 new races introduced in Wilde Beyond the Witchlight. Like I said, Faerie, I think in my mind, got a nerf overall. The change to the armor, I expected that in the long run because we do often see that winged races that get wings from the get-go, like right out the gate, they often don't allow them to do that in medium or heavy armor, which is unfortunate in my mind. I don't think we're ever going to get a change in that. But I think the Harengon is definitely a top-tier race. If we're going to do a tier list, let me know if you're interested. I know Smash Bros. Fans love tier lists. As a Smash Bros. Fan, I also love tier lists. But I could do a tier list of races, maybe, for 5e. I think Harengon is definitely high tier, edging on top tier, whereas I think I'd put the Faerie at like mid tier. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned as I will be covering several other things in Wilde Beyond the Witchlight. We're going to be talking about the backgrounds, the trinkets, the different character traits. We'll be talking about the new monsters, the magic items, all that kind of stuff. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.